I think Peter would love this move as well.
Yeah.
Could you also go rook h8? That's something that you mentioned. And he goes king f6.
Stops knight g5.
It certainly does.
But rook c7, what's his idea? Does he want to just get his king to e6 in the center of the board?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, he moves up h4, which makes a lot of sense. You know, white is just insisting that they want to play knight to g5. And then suddenly, checkmating ideas on f7 abound.
Yeah. I think you were both right there. If the other white rook had landed on c7, Magnus would happily have ignored that, taken a pawn, and the black king would have just run into the center to safety. And meanwhile, white's house would have been the one on fire. So h4... huge threat. Nice spot by Gukesh. That's a great practical move from the world champion. Magnus, deep in thought. It is always the hardest thing in chess to win a one game, to get the ball over the line.
And Gukesh making it a bit messy for Magnus. Meanwhile, what move number are we on in this game, David?
40.
So they get an extra 10 seconds every time they press the clock. Once Magnus has made his next move, I think Gukesh looked up to just make sure the move counter's been met. And Magnus, is he feeling it? That, you know, Gukesh has got some tricks suddenly. He needs to be precise now.
This is one of the things about defending. You might have a completely lost position, but if you can keep the game alive, one move, then you can just frustrate your opponent. And Magnus is definitely seeing knight to g5, big threat on the board. And it's maybe not that easy just to put the boot in for Magnus.
Wondering about now, maybe your move, Tanya, being a good practical try, but it feels like the black king on f6 coming out for no reason. You've just given white some tempi in the process. Magnus did shake his head slightly. He moves his king across. Wow, he's getting ready to march into the center. It's another king march.
You said he's the champion of King of the Hill. You played a few of those against him, and he's very good at it.
Wow, the last time these two met, just last week, it was mutual king hunts. It was first Gukesh chasing Magnus's king, then Magnus eventually chasing Gukesh's king decisively. Now he's marching forward. That is a scary path to take, but I think it's all under control. The bar seems to approve for Magnus Carlsen.
Magnus Carlsen was brave enough to do it with the queen and the rook on the board in that one here. At least it's the end game, so it looks slightly more human. Magnus sips on that bottle and makes his move coolly and calmly. Mr. Cool here.
Absolutely, the king needed to step forward in the middle, otherwise after king f6, rook takes f7 would have been a horrible checkmate, and no one is immune from checkmate. But king to d5, and now Gukesh just has to do any randomizer move because he is ultimately, as the bar shows, lost.
But is he running out of it? Because he's got to keep checking the black king, right? But you've got a clear path forward. And actually the only moves in the position if you're black, rook a5 check, king d4, rook a4 check, e3 or d3 hitting that rook on c2 as well. And then you suddenly run out of those random moves.
Yeah, this is the problem, Tanya, right? If you start checking, that you're driving the black king to right where it wants to go, which is f2 to set up a beautiful checkmating net around the white king. The ultimate hunter, right?
Beautiful. And maybe the king really is a piece in the endgame when Magnus Carlsen is playing.
Wow, so brave though, like so just nonchalant, just not caring about any kind of ghosts here, Magnus. I think most of us, even if we saw the black king is not getting mated, we would be scared. We'd be like, oh, why would I bring my king out into the center like this? But there we go, Gukesh gives a check. The black king continues its journey. It's just walked across the board on the last four moves, and it's doing so with immunity here. King d3 coming next. And yeah, if Magnus gets a move or two of his own, rook takes pawn, and some lines, once the white knight moves away, rook h3 is checkmate. So white cannot just chill. Gukesh needs to keep creating threats. Check.
You might be seeing this line. Now, Magnus, does he come closer toward the white king? I would be tempted to hit that white rook and win a tempo in that way, get that king to d3. I'm not sure what's the follow-up. Do you simply take the b3 pawn afterwards? But Magnus slows down. He's also considering the two possibilities, both equally attractive.
Yeah, definitely. And the onus would be on Gukesh, right? If you step up with king to d3, where are you going to put the rook? How can you cause maximum mischief? Because that's all what Gukesh is hoping for right now.
Okay, Magnus reaching out. He's going to move his king. Apparently there is a big difference between king e3 and king to d3. Don't really see it, but apparently king to d3. You can go back and repeat the position as well, but king to d3 is by far the strongest move. The most natural one, though, we should say.
I mean, the only thing I see is that you have a rook e4 check, but you can anyway slide over to d3. Magnus is about to make his decision. It's forward, and he, of course, finds the best move.
Of course he does. Magnus Carlsen does so most of the time. White rook slides across. This is not one-way traffic. The black king's still in some potential danger if you misstep. I don't really recommend taking this pawn now due to some potential skewers. I think that wins white some material, although, yeah, who knows? You better not calculate that one, though, with no time on your clock. 2 minutes 50 against just over 2 minutes. Time scramble.
Yep, and rook f3 on the agenda. It is a time scramble with the black king. I mean, at this point, you just want to put it in the bag, right? You just want to make moves, swap off a few pieces, and then win the b pawn, promote the e pawn, the end.
I want to say it's still a bit tricky, right? You want to push those central pawns, but f7 is hanging. Of course, the bar says Magnus is completely winning. Yes, he's a favorite to win this, probably 9.5 out of 10 times. But there's still work to be done. As long as the two rooks and the knights combine checks, we know how tricky the position can be. Magnus with that pose, our hand reader, resident hand reader, you know, when you're just about to make a move, as he does. It's the f-pawn that's coming forward. He pushes the knight away, and it's not a good move.
Wow, okay. Well, Magnus, they're giving some chances for Gukesh. But the plan is very simple. He just wants to drive the knight away and then swap off rooks and then just pick off the b-pawn. But just to update you on one last set of results, it was a draw between Vaishali and Humpy, so we're going to be seeing our 5th Armageddon.
Okay. I'm not going to say who predicted 5 Armageddons, but...
You did.
Danny predicted 6, so it's not over. Okay.
I mean, this could go anyway now. But you know, that clock situation with Gukesh as well, and we saw it their last classical game. Did everything right, needed those extra seconds to hold the draw, didn't have them, and bungled it all away. In this one, clock keeps ticking, Gukesh feeling the nerves as he pulls his sleeves back. Rook check you're pointing out. Is that the way to go?
Yeah, the computer says this is the only move for Gukesh to keep the game alive, to take advantage of Magnus Carlsen's last slip. I would say the more natural move maybe is to bring the white knight back, but then the black king could slide across and the white rook is actually really lacking squares. So you need to give this check. If the black king continues coming down, you can give more checks. And if the game continues, Gukesh needs to find this one, though, to start.
So you need the knight on g5 to defend, to protect that rook on f3 so the other rook can join the party. He just needs to go down to the basics, right? Checks, captures, threats.
Start with the checks. He's down, though, at 35 seconds, Gukesh. Only way to stay alive in this game. Otherwise, Magnus is just going to trade off pieces and do it the long way.
And the last time it was a wrong check that cost him a game. He's about to reach out, and David, it is the rook. He finds it, but he's got to find the next few precise moves as well.
And now the big question for Magnus there, you can see it's only move. He needs to step up and just go step closer to the rook on f3.
This is the best position Gukesh has had in ages, in at least 25 moves. Here, Magnus needs to find king to e2, going towards that rook, and more importantly, using the black rook to block any checks. The second rank is where white's rook is going to continue harassing that black king. I have a feeling Magnus might be looking in the other direction, trying to hide his king behind the white pawn over here. So it's not going to be easy. It's a 50-50. You definitely don't want to go to d2 because the white knight will come back.
He needs to make a decision in a minute and a half. I think the problem with getting your king to b1 could be that once the knight retreats, you know, there are checks on that c3 square that you have to be incredibly careful about. So getting that king to b1 might be something that Gukesh, in fact, is hoping for.
Yeah. The black king, ironically enough, needs to be active. It needs to be out there in the open. And you definitely, I agree with you, Tanya, you don't want a knight appearing on e4. You'd much rather that the white rook were there in the way. Where's he going to go? He steps to the correct square.
Okay, great move. Now Gukesh has to give check. The white rook now is vulnerable. The white knight also attacked, defending that rook. So those two pieces are frozen. You have to give check here or here. 2 squares across the board or down the board. Which one is Gukesh going to go for? He Forces a rook trade. Magnus now can block this check. Rooks come off the board very quickly, and the knight saves itself with a fork. This is still game on. It's going to be 3 pawns for white, 3, maybe 4 pawns for black, but Gukesh still alive.
Well, you could. The blue arrow helps us out, right? King e2, you attack the rook, and if the rook gives a check, king e3, hitting the knight, the key defender. So you don't have a check if you're white here. I think rook f to king e3 loses.
And that's why he steps up with the king. You're setting your plan in motion. And the knight is threatening to take both d6 and f6. And let's not forget, there is a passed h-pawn for white.
But now your idea, just start pushing the d pawn, right? d5, d4, d3.
It's a race, right?
It's a race.
But you give up f6, David.
Yeah, you have to give up one of them. The 2
That's
pawns
true.
are hanging. Magnus really took his eye off the ball, I think, allowing that white knight to retreat. Maybe playing d5 while the white knight was still stuck over on g5 was the way to go. Now it is a pure race, and it's just about whether Magnus is quick enough with this pawn. Gukesh first might be tempted to give a check, but the black king would simply move, so no, he grabs a pawn. It's suddenly level material. Gukesh, I think he's excited about saving this, adjusting his collar there. Magnus, though, with these 2 strong pawns, still hard to predict.
What is it, Gukesh versus Magnus, always ending in a pawn race involving an h-pawn?
And a king hunt along the way.
And a time scramble as well, as the players are both under the minute. Rook moves over to f8, just chasing away that knight. But can you not just go knight d7? No, because there's a big threat of knight to h5 check.
Oh my goodness. He sets it up. That's a big trap.
Big trap. Only move for Gukesh is to give check with his rook. That is...
He
wow,
finds it.
Magnus ready to move. He was expecting it. He's about to renew that threat by keeping his king connected to that white rook. White rook's got to keep checking.
Right, and he cannot step up with the king to e3 because then it's going to be met knight takes d5.
You've got to go down to e1.
He finds it, okay.
That's it. But you still can't move the knight, right? Because knight h5.
No, but you can support that pawn on f6 by playing g5. Only move.
Gukesh. Ooh,
What did he blunder?
moves his knight out the way.
But knight h5?
Well, he's been tricky because if you go knight h5, suddenly it's an even bigger race than it was before with 2 passed pawns on the board.
Magnus is getting nervous. This is the most nervous we've seen him in a while. Suddenly it's a fork as well. The black rook hit, the black pawn hit. He might need to defend his pawn, move his rook out the way. The advantage is slipping away from the world number 1. Gukesh is fighting so hard right now.
He's fighting so incredibly well. I mean, just insane, you know, holding this position so far long against Magnus Carlsen.
Magnus
He jumps in with a
blunders!
blunder. Rook takes knight. This is over. You're up a piece.
Yeah, he's banking on the d-pawn running down the board.
But the knight has to have a path back. Can you go all the way to e4 and go knight c3
Yes,
check
you
in
can.
the end? Knight d7, knight c5, knight e4, knight c3 when Magnus queens.
You absolutely can, but look, you only got 20 seconds left on the clock, and Gukesh has to act fast.
He has to find this.
And
he's gone another route, but he still wants to go c5, e4 or g5, e4. e4 is the key square for the knight.
Exactly.
Is Gukesh about to win his first classical game against Magnus Carlsen?
Wow.
Oh my goodness, what a turnaround. And Magnus now under 20 seconds. But there's nothing for it. He just has to push the pawns and hope one of them gets to the promotion square.
Oh my goodness, and it's the h-pawn that will decide the game.
Magnus is about to push his pawn, but he needs a miracle now. This is about to go down in the history books, this game. Magnus was reaching for his king, pawn to d2. The move he had missed is knight e4, back with a fork, knight c3, and Magnus retreats. Now, only winning move for Gukesh is shown by the blue arrow. He has to go to the edge of the board this time.
Oh my God, will he find it?
20 seconds to find this move. Knight to a4 to stop the pawn from the front, to stop it from the b2 square. Process of elimination, I think he finds it.
Gukesh, you cannot miss this opportunity. You have to find this. This is a once in a lifetime.
finds
He
it.
does it.
Oh my God. The world champion just turning it around. Knight a4, knight to b2, and Magnus just advancing the e-pawn. That's all he can do.
This has been a champion's performance against the GOAT so far, but still, it's not over. David, how precise does Gukesh need to be to wrap this up?
Gukesh is winning. It's a race, and There we go. He starts the race, pawn to h5. He reaches for the queen, Gukesh. That is symbolic. He's about to promote to a queen. It's another pawn race between these two. Magnus, though, lacking the knight, lacking the time. He's one move too slow. Look at his hand shaking, Magnus Carlsen.
Oh, Magnus Carlsen is about to lose to Gukesh. This is unbelievable. What a turnaround.
Yeah, but does he have to be careful here, Gukesh? Okay, he moves the knight to b2, finding all the right moves.
And in the end, it's going to be the b3 pawn that's going to win the game for Gukesh. The queens are going to be traded off if Gukesh has calculated this line all the way.
Oh my God!
Signs.
Magnus banged the table and the pieces fell over. Look at that devastation from the world number one. Turnaround. Historic moment. Gukesh wins against all the odds.
Wow.